Hello, and in this course we're going to learn a lot about a speed tree. And the main target students for this course are the beginners who really want to deep dive into a speed tree to learn creating amazing trees. But also intermediate students will find value from this course. And what's nice about this course is that we're going to cover a speed tree cinema and games edition as well, because we're going to create trees for VFX and games as well, so that maximum numbers of students can benefit from this. So after installing the SpeedTree and running, of course we are running a SpeedTree Cinema version 9, and a lot of this content is going to be applicable to SpeedTree version 8 as well. SpeedTree 9 has added a lot of amazing features, but 90% of what we are going to learn here is going to be usable in previous iterations of SpeedTree. So this is the first screen when you open up a SpeedTree, and you're going to get a scene like this. You're going to be prompted with this window to either create a blank scene or choose from one of these templates or choose a recent model which you have been working on. So let's create a blank scene, and this is the default scene that you're going to be faced with. And we're going to deep dive in a lot of these menus, but for starters, let's see what the navigations are. You have three navigation styles in SpeedTree. You right click here, and in the window navigation you have three styles, which is standard, trackball, and traveler. The most basic one is the standard, and that is the default SpeedTree. When you click on a screen, it's going to create a pivot point for you so that you can spin around it, pan, zoom, and rotate, and do all kinds of translation things in a SpeedTree. To pan around your scene, you simply hold down middle mouse click of the mouse and pan the view. And this is going to offset the pivot and the viewport at the same time. To rotate around, you're going to simply hold down left click and drag it to orbit around your scene like this. And to zoom in and out, you can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, or hold down the left mouse and middle mouse together and drag in and out to zoom into your scene. So that's your choice to see which one you're happy with. And of course, if you come from Maya or 3ds Max, you can go to this edit, preference, and in this tree menu in the controller scheme, you can select Autodesk Maya or 3ds Max, which one you're happy with. And this is going to alter the navigations to the software that you're used to work with, if you're using Max or Maya. So this was for the standard, and let's go to window, navigation, and trackball. First, let's add a tree trunk here to see how the trackball is going to function. The controls are the same. You're going to hold down left click to pan, rotate around your scene, but this mode is free mode. You can go for any direction that you want, and of course the directions which are not available in the standard view mode. For panning around your scene, you're going to hold down the middle click, and for zooming in and out, you're going to press and hold down the left mouse click and middle mouse click together and dragging in and out. And the most basic difference between this trackball and a standard is that the rotating doesn't really constrain you to any axis. You're going to be freely rotating around this in 360 degrees sphere-like rotation. But in the standard mode, you're going to have a more reasonable rotating. And the next one is the traveler. You go to window, navigation, and traveler. In this mode, you can walk pretty much like a game and move around the scene like a player. By holding down left click and going in and out, you're going to get closer or move away from the scene. By holding down left and middle click, you're able to look around and change direction, and by pressing middle mouse click and holding and going up and down, you're going to change the height, and by going left and right, you're able to pan around the scene to see what works and what not. So I'm freely able to work with the standard because I like that the most. And of course, that's the personal preference. So after understanding the navigation, let's talk about the UI. This window that you see here is called the tree window. This is the 3D viewport where you are able to visualize your model and see the final result in here. Let me open a sample so that we have a little bit more beautiful things to look at. So let's close this one out. We don't want to save it, so no. And let's select something from this. Let's go for this last one. So it's going to take a bit and load the scene for you, and it's going to have a little bit of calculations to calculate the shadow AO and things like that. Of course, we're going to discuss all of these later on. So understanding that this is the viewport and you're going to render and see the final result, just like most of the applications, it's going to be default perspective. And not only that, we're going to be able to divide this up to 4 sections to see the tree in orthographic views as well. So to see them like that, you right click on window layout, you're able to divide this into 1, 4, and 2. So let's click on 4. It's going to divide the viewport into 4 sections. One, which is the perspective mode, and the most pleasing one looking at the tree from top view, one left to right, and one front and back, just like any other 3D application. And of course, if you get lost in the perspective view, for example, if you're losing your tree, just double click on the perspective space so that it focuses the tree for you. And of course, to customize this window, you can deselect everything and hold down this to open this viewport menu. So for the layout, let's go for other ones as well. This one divides the window to top and bottom. The top one is the perspective, and the bottom one is going to render the YZ plane. Of course, this is not the only mode. You can click on this, and instead of YZ, go for example for XZ, or for going to top and bottom, you can go for X and Y and double click so that it centers the tree for you. And you can customize that to your needs as well. And the next mode, let's click on this, and it's going to divide to right and left, which one you're seeing the perspective. Of course, you can change this one as well. For example, changing this one to XZ and this one to XY, and which one you prefer. And again, if you get lost, just double click on anywhere on the empty space to get back to the tree creation. So for the time being, let's go to just one tree. And of course, if you have multiple layouts, for example, let's select 4. By double clicking with the middle mouse click, you're able to isolate which view that you want. You're going to only have to double click with the middle mouse click to isolate them or go back to the layout view. So let's select the perspective and go to 1 so that this is the default one. And of course, it's going to remember the last layout that you created. For example, if I double click with the middle mouse click, I'm able to go back into here and see the layout as well. So for resizing any of these viewports, you simply hold down this lines in here and maximize any of them that you like. And again, you can go back to the desired view by double middle clicking in here. And to further customize the viewport, you're able to set the grid lines color as well. This one is the default gray grid line. If you want to change the color, you can change in here to see the grid line in the color that you want. It's not pretty important, but that's something to consider. And if you want to go back to the default gray, you simply drag this slider down so that you go to the default. And the next one is grid spacing, and this is based on the unit setup that you have for your scene. And to set up your units, you go to Preference, Edit, Preference, and in Tree window, there's a unit in here which you can manipulate. And by the default, it's in foot. But if you're going to work in Unreal Engine or softwares that use meter system, you're going to set it to centimeters and meters as well, because it's going to be pretty important, and you're going to assign the unit always, even before starting a project. Now the unit is in foot, and this grid spacing is going to be in foot as well. It's going to have 10-foot spacing between each line in here. And one good practice before starting any project is going to be setting the unit, because for now the height of the tree in units are 43, and this is in foot. But if you export this one into Unreal Engine, it's going to be exported as 43 units, and the units are going to be in Unreal Engine units, which are centimeters, and this tree is going to be exported as 40 centimeter tree, which is not right. So when creating a new project, let's go for blank now. Before doing anything, just go to the units, in here, preference, and instead of foot, for example, set it to centimeters. And when you create a basic trunk, you can scale up the tree by selecting it. And in this properties menu, you go for size. And for example, make it 10 times bigger. And you're going to see the result in centimeters instead of feet. Now the tree is 2.5 meters. And you can of course increase the size to whatever you want. So it's a good practice to, whenever you are starting a project, just go and set the unit to centimeters if you are using centimeters. Or if your destination software uses one of these units, just set it and you're good to go. So now one problem occurs. If you go in here, you see that the size of the tree that we were creating, for example, is now in centimeters instead of feet. And as I said, this is the problem that occurs when you convert the unit in the middle of the project. And it's always good to set the units before starting the project so that you do not face such a problem. So to convert this without any problem, you go to Tools and set the unit conversion. And this way, if you for any reason forgot to set the units before starting the project, you hit scene unit conversion, and if you remember, this was in feet. So in here we're going to convert it from feet to centimeters and hit OK. Now we got the units back in centimeters. So to check that if we are right or wrong, let's go to a unit converter. And the tree, I believe, was 42.9, I believe, 42.9 something. And we get 1,300 centimeters, which is right in here. So always before starting the project, just set the units. And if you forgot how to set the units, this is the way to do and to convert. And this indicator always is a good idea to look at to see the scale of the tree. And this is, I believe, 180 centimeters tall, and this is going to be a pretty good indicator of how tall the tree that you're going to be creating is. So let's go to window properties, and this light map view, we are going to be talking about it later on when we are going to create trees for Unreal Engine 4. We're going to be talking about the light maps. But to get an idea, Lightmap is the second UV channel that SpeedTree is going to create for you when importing the tree to Unreal Engine or softwares that use static lighting, so that it bakes the lighting information on the second UV channel. We're going to be talking about the light maps later on. And to make this really yours, you can change the background as well. Now it's using the ambient light, which is the default one, but you can set it to a solid color. For example, if you don't want to see any lighting information distracting your view, you're going to use the solid color. Of course, the lighting information is going to be present in the scene. It's not going to be shown as the ground and a sky, but instead you're going to set it to a color, for example, to whatever you want. And the next good option is the spherical panorama. Simply select it, and you're going to select a panorama in here. You're going to select it and go to the direction that you have an HDR image and select it. Okay, hit open, and it's going to show a default HDRI for you if you like it, and it's really good for getting a quick render and see a quick result in here. And of course you can make it brighter, make it darker, adding contrast or rotating. The controls are there and you can use them. So let's go for the default ambient lighting. So this is for the viewports, and then there's the toolbar in here, which you can do most of the basic stuff in here, including creating, if you want to even create or add anything into the scene, add any forces or add light, change the resolution, go to different modes and things like that. So let's explore to see what each one does. The first one is the render, and it's going to change what you see in here, and it's going to help you visualize a lot of the information about this model. For example, this is a PBR material in here. You see SpeedTree is going to use the PBR system for rendering, and if you're gonna only see the base color and what it does without any normal or roughness information, you go to render, and in the material mode, for example, hit color. Now you're only seeing the color without any normal or roughness information. It's pretty much only albedo and diffuse color. So the most important render ones are the standard, which is the final result, which is what you are seeing here by default. And then there's this script, which allows you to see the polygons without any PBR information. And this is the amount of polygon. You see it's pretty dense, and for something like a game model, this is not good. And it's a good indicator to see the polygons and the distribution in the tree. And the next one is the AO, which is a pretty much important one. It's going to show the ambient occlusion of the tree. And ambient occlusion is one of the most important factors in rendering a good tree. So this is the ambient occlusion. It's going to show us which parts of the tree are more exposed to the sun. The whiter the shade is, the more exposed to the sun, and the more it goes to the black, the darker it's going to be. And the black is not going to be reached by the sun, and the white parts are going to be reached by the sun basically. And it's going to make these parts darker in rendering so that we get a little bit more shape definition and depth into our trees. And to remove the ambient occlusion information, you go to this tools and clear ambient occlusion. And if you want to add ambient occlusion, you simply go to tools and render ambient occlusion. It's going to take a bit to render the tree. Now you see it has computed the ambient occlusion for us. So let's go to a standard view to see what the ambient occlusion does. And you see the parts that are not exposed to the sun are getting darker, which adds more definition and depth to the tree. So let's clear the ambient occlusion, and this is it. Now the tree looks dull and less interesting. And of course there's a shortcut in here. If you deselect everything in the viewport, there's a compute AO, and the shortcut is the key O in the keyboard. If you want to compute the ambient occlusion, you press O, and it's going to take a bit depending on the strength of your machine, and it's going to compute the ambient occlusion for you. Of course, there's albedo check and subsurface check, which we'll be talking about later on. These are indicators to see if the albedo color is right or not and subsurface color is right or not. So the most important ones are these. Of course, you can go and visualize the vertex colors if you have any, and see the different PBR textures in your material and visualize them one by one. The next option is show, and it's good for visualizing only some parts of the tree that you want. For example, if you want to hide the leaves to only be able to see the trunk and branch, you come in here and uncheck these leaves in here so that you're able to see the leaves only. And remember that it's not going to remove anything, it's going to temporarily hide it. And the next one is zoom, and pretty much you can select any part of the tree, whether you are selecting from this part or in the viewport. For example, when I select the trunk, I'm able to hit Z and zoom on the part that I have in here. And for example, if I select this part, let me see what that is. It's this part in here. Let me zoom out, and if I hit Z, or if that doesn't work, simply hit zoom and it's going to zoom on it for you. So I believe this is enough for basic stuff, and in the next chapter we're going to dive more into the features of the window tree here. Okay, see you there.